Let's get some prize picks in today, guys. It has been rough recently. Like always, there's cold streaks and hot streaks, but overall, things just always go up over time. This is my Discord chart, right? So even in my Discord, we have these losing streaks. We're actually in one right now, but I know that things always get better. So we're going to try to get a 6-man for today that actually does well. So last night, the first quarter props all missed here. So these three right here, and then one soccer pick. The other two ones did hit, but obviously it's not good enough. 2 and 4 is not going to get us anywhere. We're looking for that 6 for 6. I've had some close ones recently, but nothing concrete. Today we're going to get onto the board and make another 6-man and see how it goes tonight. Hopefully our luck turns around here, at least getting a 5 and 1 maybe, but let's see what we have for today. First off, I'm going to go to this Golden State game. I'm going to be grabbing Wiggins on his over 10.5 points. He's super inconsistent recently. I mean, last time I took his under, he ended up going over, and then last game he went under, but tonight I'm actually going to be going with the over versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. We're going to get into why I'm choosing him specifically on the over 10.5 points right after I show you who I'm grabbing on the under on the same team. We're going to grab Brandon on his under 8.5 points. Now, Brandon has not really cleared this. He only clears this versus easier matchups. So the Pacers, 13 points versus a team who lets in a lot of points versus that shooting guard position. And I could show you right here on Fantasy Pros where we get to see the head-to-head matchups on defensive matchups. So versus the shooting guard position, if we check by points, lowest, Minnesota Timberwolves leads the league with less points allowed to the shooting guard position. And we check some other teams here. We see the Memphis Grizzlies. We also see, and we see the New York Knicks. If we go and check Brandon's game logs, versus Memphis, he only got 2 points. For the Knicks, he got 0 points. The only games he cleared was versus Dallas and Indiana. And if we check where Indiana and Dallas are on this defensive position, we see that Indiana is the second worst team in the league against the shooting guard position, or allows the most points. And Dallas is pretty low here too. The Lakers are also quite low here, but you can see versus the Lakers, he only dropped 5 points. So even versus a weaker matchup, he still went under. Tonight, they are up against the number 1 defensive team against a specific position. We definitely want to be on his under. Obviously, there's going to be some scorers on this Golden State team. We're just not thinking it's Brandon tonight. We're going with Wiggins. You could go with Curry, things like that. But I'm going with Wiggins specifically because we do see some positive juice here. So minus 120 towards the over 10.5 compared to his under. That's at minus 110. So his over is more likely to hit. And if we go check Brandon, similar case here, his under is more likely to hit, minus 129. So even more juice, even more likeliness that he goes under that 8.5 points. But also, I'm just looking at the positions. You can see Minnesota versus the small forward position is actually like 13th in the league in terms of points allowed. So they're weaker against that position compared to the shooting guard, compared to the point guard. They're still like top 4 versus power forward, top 3. And versus centers, they're also a bit weaker. So that's kind of what I went for last time. I believe it was Jared Allen I took on an over points versus the Timberwolves. It didn't end up hitting, but we're going for a similar concept. The Timberwolves' worst defensive position is that small forward. So we're going with Wiggins on his over points. And the best defense is against that shooting guard. So that's where we're going with the over Wiggins, under on Brandon. Now moving on, we're going to go with another similar pick that I went with last time. We're going with Paul George on his under points. I know everyone is hammering the over right now because they see his last 5 game logs. They see this average of 27.6 over the past 5 games. But I'm going on his under. It is a popular pick, so I know a lot of you probably already on his over. But under is the play, and we know this because sportsbooks have him juiced towards that under. If I go to NBA here on Pinnacle, for example, go to Clippers, and I look at Paul George, you can see there is slight juice towards his under 23.5 points. So minus 122 compared to minus 108 on his over. This means if I want to grab his over, I only have to put $108 down to get $100 back. On the under, I have to put $122 down to get $100 back, which means it's more expensive to take his under because it is more likely to happen. So why is it more likely to happen even though he's hit in the past 5 games? Because sportsbook know all this already. They know that he played Portland in the past 2 games. They know that he played in these high-paced matchups versus Atlanta, things like this. Everything is already baked in. It's not like we're the only ones that know he's hit in the past 5 games. They know all this, and they're still saying his under is more likely to happen. Now, because his under is more likely to happen, I'm grabbing his under, of course, but I'm also pairing this up with Zubac here. Last time I did it with Kawhi. Tonight, I'm going with Zubac because this over 9.5 is looking very good. Again, these game logs mean absolutely nothing to me. I don't really care how he's done in the past 5 games. The matchups are different. Everything is different in this case. And if we go and check the juice on Zubac, it's actually insane. I don't know how this has not been bumped yet. Minus 142 juice towards the over 9.5. I do expect this to hit 10 eventually. So I do think it's going to bump to 10. While still at 9.5, you definitely want to be all over that. An exact same concept that I went over last time. When Paul George is going under, it's likely the players around him are going over. Usually it's Kawhi, but it's also Zubac is one of those that kind of takes advantage when Paul George is not getting the points and when he's kind of having a slow game. A similar concept last time. You could go with Kawhi on his over 23.5 points, but Zubac has way more juice towards his over points than Kawhi does, so I'm going with Zubac tonight. Now, these next 2 picks are not stacks or anything. There's going to be 2 positives with the value plays. Over 19.5 PRA on Jonas Valanciunas here. I'm loving this pick. So first of all, we have heavy juice on his over 19.5 points, rebound, assists. Again, minus 144. Let me just translate this for you into percentage so you see how important it is. So minus 144, 109. If we go and put this in a calculator, you're going to see that the sportsbooks are basically projecting him to go over 55% of the time. So that's why it's powerful in that sense. But also they are up against the Pistons. It's not a hard matchup here, obviously, as we know. Minus 12 spread, and the Pelicans are not even at home. It is a bit of a small total. But if we go and check the defensive positions again here, we can see that the Pistons are actually not the worst against the center position. They're not letting in the most points. But if we sort this by FanDuel fantasy points, which is more important when we're taking PRA because we're looking at points, rebounds, and assists, they are top 3 worst. So they're letting in a lot of points, rebounds, and assists cumulatively rather than just points. Realistically, we need them to get a bunch of points, rebounds, and assists, right? So I think FanDuel fantasy points is a better measure of how bad they are against this specific prop. So they're third worst here versus the center position. Versus power forward, it's a bit better. Versus small forward, they're fifth. Versus shooting guards, they are fourth. And versus point guards, they're actually first. So point guard is their worst position to defend, but center is a close second, at least in terms of PRA. Valanciunas on the over 19.5 points, rebounds, assists is the 5th pick. And the last pick is probably the worst one, the one I'm liking the least. It's going to be Chet Holmgren on the under 8.5. He's another popular one. I'm guessing people are on this over. But once again, the juice is towards the under. It makes no sense to be going on the over. You're just going against all the data because you see this nice little 4 out of 5 graph. It's not really important to me. I'm going on the under 8.5 rebounds. The only thing I don't like about this play is that Giannis is probable. Obviously, that's not good for us if Giannis is not there to get more rebounds and kind of take those rebounds away from Chet. But I still think it's okay, and I think he is going to play. The underdog report here says, assuming no downgrade, expect him to play with no limitations versus the Thunder. That's what we like to see, and if he is playing, it's just that much of a better pick. And the whole reason I'm liking this play, once again, is it is positive expected value. So if we check Chet on the sportsbooks, minus 136 juice towards the under. Despite the fact that he went over in the past 4 to 5 games, you see how they don't care about this. They care more about matchups. Then they have all this data. They have the season data. They have absolutely everything you are considering. So that is why you cannot go off of these last 5. But anyways, that is going to be the full slip. So Wiggins on the over, Brandon on the under, Paul George on the under, Zubac on the over, Valanciunas on his over PRA, and then Chet on his under rebounds. That is it for tonight.